Hey everybody, it is late at night and I am Norman. As you may know, I spend a lot of time on eBay. I have so many saved lists there, it takes me probably about an hour to go through all of them. So on a daily basis, I see a lot of brilliant watches, ugly watches, and mediocre watches. You may have already seen some of my previous videos where I did ugly watches on eBay. However, tonight we're going to be positive. We're going to be looking at some of the brilliant watches that I've encountered on eBay that I haven't purchased, but I've admired. So let us begin. The first watch I have on my list is an Avia watch. Or is it Avia? I think it's short for Aviator, so Avia. This vintage Avia watch is amazing looking. It is literally all dial. It appears that most of their watches were amazing in the 1960s. The brand was still going strong in the 1970s, however, with quartz watches becoming cheap, and I mean dirt cheap, the company kind of waned. It was once part of a group of watch brands that included Invicta back in the day. It was later purchased by Fossil, and apparently Fossil is still producing Avia watches, but I've seen zero evidence of that online. This piece has amazing tall, slender, mid-century style Arabic numerals at the 12 o'clock, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock. But the 6 is kind of cut off by the small seconds subdial. That's kind of interesting. The hands are super thin pencil hands and they're done in gold. The case is also gold and the dial is kind of a creamish color. None of the hands have counterweights on them. There are batten markers for all the hours that aren't Arabic. And the fact that this watch has an Inca block system in it is called out on the dial. So yeah, this watch is just brilliant looking. I love how it is 100% dial. There really isn't a bezel at all. The crystal just goes right up to the edge of the case. I like its Bauhausy aesthetic, and yet it is super mid-century looking, kind of Jetsons-y with that font. Super mid-century modern. I like it. This was on eBay as an auction and the winning bid was $55. So someone got a pretty good deal on this watch. That's not bad. The case size is 34.33 millimeters and the lug width is 16 millimeters. The next watch I encountered, most of you have heard of. This is the Zenos X. This is Zeno's Explorer 1016 homage. Man, and when I was prepping for this video and was looking at the pictures of the Zeno, I just had to get out the Everest. The 1016 is so great. I used to own a Zeno Bauhaus winder and that watch was amazing looking. It was just a bit too large for its own aesthetic. If I remember right, that was 40 millimeters and just looked like a platter on the wrist. But the white indices and white painted hands on it and super ultra minimal Bauhaus dial, that watch is so cool. I've actually been looking for a watch that looks just like that, only smaller. Zeno does make a ladies variant, but those are really small. Maybe too small. But that was a brilliant watch. It would be cool to see one in person again. But the Zex is properly proportioned. It is Explorer size. It's at 36 millimeters. They even did an acrylic crystal on it to kind of stick with the vintage homage sensibilities. Yeah, these watches just look amazing. And the crystal on them is really tall and just brilliant. And this particular listing was also an auction and someone got this watch for a great price. Because I'm pretty sure I've seen these for over $200, maybe approaching $300. Although those might have been new. I'll have to pay more attention to my Zeno Zex saved search. But the winning bid on this watch was $171. The case size is 36 millimeters, and these have screw down crowns. The reference for this watch is the ZN001. Next up we have a vintage SEMA Chronograph watch, and this watch looks so great. It has black Delphine hands for the hours and minutes, a black center chronograph hand, a black stick hand for the second subdial, and a pointed black hand for the running chronograph subdial. According to this listing, if you run the chronograph for about 15 minutes or so, the watch just completely stops. And I'm wondering if this is a behavior or flaw in these vintage chronographs, because I have another chronograph that's vintage sitting on the shelf back here that belongs to a good friend of mine, and it does similar behavior. We were thinking perhaps the chronograph hand was fouling on something, but a couple weeks ago I ran it for about 20 minutes and it would periodically stop, but when I looked there was plenty of room above and below the chronograph hand. So I'm wondering if that is just behavior that these old chronographs had. But with this particular watch in this listing, if it does stop and you reset the chronograph, it begins to run again as though nothing happened. But this is such an amazing looking chronograph. I absolutely love those dark hands. They really improve legibility and give it a unique look. The two subdials are set up at the 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock positions. The even hours are called out in Arabic numerals, and these are done in a super fun font. Not terribly legible, but yeah, this watch is just brilliant looking. I love that dial, those dark hands. The whole thing is just really elegant looking, and it's a great size too. This particular watch measures 37 millimeters. It was an auction listing and someone won it for $432. So definitely not cheap for a vintage watch listing. Alright, this particular listing I've been watching for quite a while. It's been out there for a long time, and you'll see why in just a little bit. This is a listing for a silver dial pull router, and I absolutely love pull routers. I own a black dial one, and that has to be one of my favorite watches of all time. However, it would be amazing to add a silver dial variant to the collection as well. So I have a search out there for them, and this one came up, and it's just amazing looking. The shape that it's in is just phenomenal. However, it's listed at $2,500. But if the seller keeps this listing out there long enough, it may go, because I've been seeing some Don Draper Omega DeVilles come through at $2,000. When, a half a year ago, almost everyone that I saw was around $1,000. So at least the couple listings that I've seen in the past few days have been double what I usually see for those watches. So perhaps $2,500 will sell at some point. But the silver dial pull routers are just amazing looking. They have the gorgeous ring around the edge of the dial just like the black variants do. This particular one does not have crosshairs, but it does have the brilliant Delphine hands and the amazing pull router case. The case size is 34 millimeters, and in this listing, the person selling it states that the lugs are 19 millimeters, but I've been putting 18 millimeter straps on my pull router ever since I got it, and I haven't noticed any gaps between the strap and the lugs. I'm pretty sure mine's actually 18 millimeters, but now I may have to measure it. The movement inside this particular listing is the UG215. Okay, this next watch that I have on the list, I'm a little bit skeptical about. This is a vintage Rolex Oyster watch that looks absolutely amazing. However, in the listing, it's claimed that it's worth $9,000, but it's listed for under $3,000. And it's claimed to have been serviced. But the seller does offer a 1-year warranty, so maybe it's legit. This watch, of course, has the brilliant Oyster case. It kind of looks like a vintage Oyster Perpetual, but it's not listed as an Oyster Perpetual. I'm not a huge Rolex person, so I think this is just a Rolex Oyster? That's what it's listed as. But it has 18 karat gold hands and indices on it. It has a black dial. And just look at that crystal. Oh, that is so cool. It's nice in vintage size, which for me is amazing, at 34 millimeters. And it's a manual wind watch. It is not an automatic. I mean, if this thing is legitimate and it has been serviced and serviced well, a viable alternative to a contemporary Oyster Perpetual? I've been watching this listing for quite a while as well. I often pull it up and just kind of check it out, especially that shot of the crystal. Man, it looks so great. Alright, so going from one brand that claimed to summit Mount Everest to another brand that actually has a little bit more of a legitimate claim to such a feat, I found a Smith's Deluxe on eBay. And this watch is an absolute thing of beauty. However, it isn't the same Smith's Deluxe that did summit Mount Everest. That one actually had a custom dial, apparently. And this is a shot of it on display in a museum. However, the Smith's that's listed here on eBay is just absolutely amazing looking. The crystal is gorgeous and appears to be in great shape. And this one also has dark hands on it. There are Arabics calling out the 12, 3, 6, and 9. And on this particular watch, the 6 is not cropped off by the sub-seconds. I love the Smith's logo. Everything about this watch is just brilliant. This is not an auction listing, and the price that it's going for is $300. The case size is an itty bitty 32 millimeters. The lug width is 16 millimeters, and the case height is 9 millimeters. Alright, now for something completely different. This next watch that I found is a transforming watch. It is all plastic, of course, and the case is white, and this watch transforms into a jet. I remember in elementary school, a kid that I knew actually had a watch that transformed into a jet. I don't think it was this particular one, but that was a long time ago. It might have been. That was back in the day before Transformers blew up, when your only options were GoBots or generic other transforming toys. And GoBots were just kind of weird. Remember the GoBots Rock Lords? Yeah, those were something. But at the time that they came out, I was really young, and I actually wanted one of the gold ones. So this listing has been out there for quite a while, and the price has been dropped a couple different times, so now it's going for really cheap, $30. I haven't picked it up though because the saved search that this showed up on, I'm actually looking for one of the black little kid watches that transforms into a robot. But decent looking ones of those that have come through have been a bit more pricey, so yeah, don't really want to spend a ton of money on a toy watch, but they're fun. I would like to get one. The nostalgia would be great. And this watch was produced by Timeco. Alright, so we're going to stick with sort of the retro sci-fi thing, going from a transforming watch to a watch where you can record voice messages on it. So the last watch on my list is a Citizen Voice. This is a crazy Anadigi watch, and that's so wild that you can actually record brief voice messages on it. I'm pretty sure that most smartwatches today can't even do that. Super useless, but super cool. And I found a video clip on YouTube of someone actually recording and playing back their voice on this watch. Check that out.
Relógio Citizen.
Relógio Citizen.
That is high fidelity. So this watch is listed at $300. The reference number for the watch is 30-6011. The problem with this listing, besides being a bit spendy, is the seller didn't put a battery in this watch. So when you buy this, you have no idea if it actually works. I feel like if you're selling quartz or digital watches, put a battery in them. Batteries are dirt cheap. You can buy a pack of 5 for $3 or something. It's crazy how cheap they are. Just buy a battery, put it in there. That way we know that the watch actually works. But there you have it, some brilliant watches that I've found on eBay and haven't purchased any of them. But I feel like a couple of them are very tempting. That Rolex, the transforming one because it's so cheap, the Smith's Deluxe, but it's kind of spendy. I feel like on this list, the Rolex is probably the most tempting because I am trying to save for a contemporary Oyster Perpetual, but this one looks so great, and I love that case size. Thanks for watching.